Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Weighing In, brought to you by USA Wrestling, the national governing body for wrestling in the United States, and by Nike Wrestling. Go to athleteps.com for all of your Nike and USA Wrestling branded gear. Joined, as always, by Mark Ostrander. Grant Turner is on assignment. The NAI Nationals are now three-day tournament. He is up there coaching, so good luck to GT, Grandview, all those teams. We have relationships with a bunch of those teams. And joined today by my good friend, one of my formers, actually, head coach, Wyoming Seminary, Cornell Robinson. Cornell, glad to have you on with us today, man.
Oh, thanks for the invite. Appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. So we're going to circle back to some Wyoming Seminary stuff and some of the historical high school performances over the weekend, but we are a USA Wrestling podcast, so we need to kick it off with Greco. The headline is 3 of the 6 weights qualified for the Olympics. And by that, they met a quota. And what that means is to probably pick the most recognizable name. Colton Schultz qualified 130 kilos for the United States as one of the 16 slots at the Olympics. Colton Schultz is not guaranteed to go to the Olympics. In some countries, it's one and the same, like Stevan Misic, Miles Amin. Those guys generally don't have to go through a second process. Here in the United States, you do have to go through a second process. I think one of the most recognizable examples was Daniel Dennis and Tony Ramos, where Ramos qualified the weight, and then Daniel Dennis ended up being our representative. So, Cornell, you and I guess let's kind of lay out how we know each other so people know. You're a St. Louis guy. You were coached by the legendary Charlie Sherritt Sr. in high school, coached by the legendary Ron Mirikitani in college. So I got to be in your corner for a year. Mark, you should know this. When Cornell was good, if he walked across the mat on his hands, we used to give him a Mountain Dew at the end of practice.
Oh, yeah. Mountain
Dew. People don't know Cornell was a heavyweight. So he'd walk across the mat on his hands. We had, little guys that couldn't do that. So, and then when Cornell started his RTC with CBC High School, Extreme RTC, he allowed me to be one of his assistant coaches, which was a fun reversal switch. And I got the chance to corner like Josh Saunders, Savion Severato, Malik Johnson, DJ Shannon, some guys like that, that Cornell did far and away the heavy lifting with those guys. Vinny Zurban, another one who's doing really well right now. So we've known each other since he was 18 years old. So, and he's done a great job. He's coached multiple age group USA teams, U15s, U17s, Pan Am teams, stuff like that. So, Cornell, your thoughts on us getting 3 of the 6 through? Should we, as a country, be happy? Should we be, I know what I think, but I'm going to get your opinion first. Like, is it about what we should have expected, or should we be disappointed?
I think, it's been a big transition phase, right? Having a leader for Greco for his coaching. I think, on the outside looking in, I haven't been involved with the Greco program as much lately, but I think Herb House and those guys are getting it together. And so I think that's a pretty good showing, getting 3. Hopefully we can qualify the next 3 in the next qualifier coming down the road in March. But, yeah, I think we should be very happy with that. I think, it's pretty tough, but I think, it is the Pan Ams, and I think we're so used to dominating in freestyle. It would have been nice to get those weights qualified in Greco.
It's definitely true. We're used to dominating, like if you looked at the Pan Am, not the qualifier, but the tournament right before that, America medaled in 29 of the 30 weights. And I think in men's freestyle, teched or pinned everybody. So, when we get on these shows, like when Kyle Martin's another guy that we both know that is involved with these age group teams. And like when everybody wins, like one guy takes silver or bronze or a girl takes silver or bronze, while it's an amazing accomplishment, it tends to be like, it's probably harder to make the team than it is to win the medal there. So Mark, what surprised me, frankly, like the 3 names that I think are the most well-known on the Greco level are probably Colton Schultz, Kamal Bey, and Ildar. And 2 of those 3 didn't make it through. Just so people understand, there is no finals match, okay? So if Cornell makes the finals and I make the finals, we're both in, we don't wrestle. So to use Cornell's phrase, the semifinals is the money round, okay? So Mark, I was surprised. I thought Kamal could get through and would, and Ildar could and would. And Cornell mentions there's one last opportunity, but that is maybe one of the hardest tournaments in the world. It's everybody who didn't make it trying to get 3 spots. So what were your thoughts on the other, just the whole thing, your thoughts on the Greco?
Well, I was surprised, to be honest with you, that we got 3 through, just because we have struggled in Greco compared to freestyle. I guess we're getting spoiled in freestyle, watching our guys dominate the world. So I thought 3 was not a bad number, because the United States is not known for being a top level Greco nation. So because we do more freestyle here, folk style, and it's just different because you do Greco, like we've talked about 100 times, David. You do Greco when you're young and you learn it, and then there's not all of it out there. There's not a lot of schools to go to train in Greco, just Greco. So it's harder for us to get to that level. So I'm happy for the guys that made it. Obviously, Colton Schultz is he's been there for years now, representing the United States in Greco at all age levels. So congrats to him. So, yeah.
I literally just texted with Eric Thompson 10 minutes ago, and we were talking about the last 45 seconds to a minute. You're doing a lot more hoping and praying than coaching in a lot of situations, So, and Cornell, you and I have talked about this off the air, and so is Mark and I. I think, and you coach some of these guys, like our maybe up to 18-year-old Greco guys are as good as anybody in the world. But then when you take a 5-year gap where you're paid to go to college and they want you to protect your legs and grab legs, that's a very formative time. And then try to come back and be good at 23, and these other people have been going after it for 5 years, right?
Yeah. And the angles are just so different in Greco, the scoring angles, the concept. And I think, we just get behind on that aspect, like I said, because folk style is geared towards freestyle. So I don't know if we can ever catch up. It's definitely the fight that's been talked about for years. So
this guy didn't coin the phrase, but he said it with me on a play-by-play, and I thought it was super informational. He said, in freestyle, the offense is in front of you, and in Greco, the offense is behind you. And you and I have talked about that off the air too. And I think what we mean by that is most of the big throws, you're going backwards, where in, like folk style, freestyle, you get to the edge and then you cartwheel and go forward with it. And to get people to get used to moving in the opposite direction, like you literally have to do a 180. And so it's complicated. So we're recording this on Thursday morning. So the women are competing today. For people that are just casual international or freestyle and Greco fans, it's fine. A lot of our hammers are not competing because they have already qualified the weight for the Olympics. And what that means is they took top 5, 5th or better at the 2023 World Championships. That's a change from the last time where it was the top 6. So they wrestled a true 5th place match there. And that extra slot becomes the 3rd place slot at the last chance tournament. Previously, it only been the top 2. But this way, like if Cornell's the best guy and I got stuck on his side of the bracket, I get pulled through the repechage and have a chance to actually qualify. So like Adeline and some of those kind of folks, Helen, that medaled at the the Worlds, have already qualified America for the Olympics. And they will also sit in the finals of the Olympic trials. It's everybody coming to get them if you're top 3. So, and the other thing that's important for people to understand is Greco, women's freestyle, and men's freestyle all have different procedures. They're not all working off the same playbook. And most people basically follow men's freestyle the most. So like where Vito, comes down to the bottom semi, and Zane Rutherford is going to pop down to the bottom semi, although nobody knows what weight yet. Not all the other styles are doing it the exact same way. So we'll get way more into this after the NCAAs are over, but we're literally, as a country, trying to qualify for the Olympics right now. And if you talk to the Bill Zaddicks or the Steiners of the world, they will tell you it's way easier to try to get through this tournament than the other tournament. Like in 21, Zane Rutherford was killing the guy and pinned himself in a leg lace. And no criticism, just that's what happened. And then Jordan Oliver won the trials and tried to qualify the weight and lost in the semis to Musakayev, I think. Is that right? Yeah, Musakayev. Yep. And so didn't make it. Where now in this procedure, he would have had one more match. He would have had the true third match. Well, actually 2 matches. He would have had to wrestle, the winners that came to him and then one more, but he'd still been alive. But it would have been way easier for Zane Rutherford, who was killing that guy, just to not get pinned.
Yeah,
so
that's crazy.
Yep, it's true. And you and I talk probably once a month off the air about all sorts of things about life. Sometimes it's not about wrestling, but I do remember us having that conversation. So, all right, let's get into the last week of the NCAA season. So Marco, Oklahoma State, Iowa. GT actually isn't coaching. He just didn't want to come on the air because he picked it 5-5. You picked it in 7-3. I picked it 6-4, but to be fair, 49 was a match that didn't have I picked Rachi. And if I had known Voinovich was wrestling, I would have picked J-Dub, because I know from inside sources that one of the reasons Voinovich left was because of his success against J-Dub. So, but anyway, I think you and me had it fairly close. Overall summary of things: Iowa wins 7 out of 10 matches. They won most of the coin flips. The rankings upsets were at 65. Caliendo beat Izzy, and heavyweight, where Ben Keeter beat Doucette. Ayala wins in overtime. Fix wins his last match at GIA. Woods wins. J-Dub wins. Franek looked really good. Almost got the major against Teague Travis. 74. PK looked awesome against BT. Got the major. 84. Plot beats Gabe Arnold in the matchup that we thought we would see. And then Zach Glazer very quietly has had a very good season. He is like probably 18, 17, 19-1. And then Doucette got reversed to his back by Keeter. So, Mark, we know your blood is basically black and gold. So this probably did your heart good. Your thoughts on the duel?
Well, we had talked about this, the last few weeks. This is going to be a big duel for both teams. And I think John Smith probably said it the best in his, post-game interview. They were wounded when they came in here, and that's not a team you want to wrestle when they feel wounded, because they just lost to Penn State and they lost to Michigan. And I think he kind of saw that they could have a problem. I think Iowa tripled the takedown numbers on Oklahoma State during that duel, or pretty close to that. So I think Iowa went after them. And it kind of just turned out to be a little bit of a runaway. There were some great matches, but the ones I thought were going to be real close were closer to a major than they were a decision. We had talked about that at 165. We thought that'd be a great match. And it wasn't as close as I thought it'd be.
65 was an interesting match because both those guys are coming off a tough schedule. Olenek has done Murderers Row, wrestled Keegan O'Toole and David Carr and Peyton Hall. And, he came out like gangbusters at the beginning of the year, kind of snuck a win against Hamidi at the All-Star meet, wrestled great at the Cliff Keen, and then had those matches. Caliendo took a loss to Messenbrink that frankly wasn't very close in front of a lot of people. And momentum's such a weird thing, and Cornell's still actively coaching, and, he can probably talk to it the best of the three of us, but sometimes momentum on the outside looking in is not what you think it is. Like a kid may be winning a lot, but you're like, he's kind of sneaking by. And sometimes there's a kid that's losing, but you're like, he's fine. He's getting better. He knew this was part of the process. There's that knowing nod right there. But like, you just, on the outside, we're like, hey, Cornell's lost 3 in a row. David's won 3 in a row. Like David's going to win. And then Cornell goes and lays the wood to him. Like, it's not that simple all the time of connecting the dots. Cornell, you watched the duel, and I think we're texting like right before and then afterwards. Without breaking down all 10 matches, was there a match or two that stuck out to you, and why?
Yeah, I mean, I know we talked about it. I really thought Spratley was going to win. I just thought he's been wrestling pretty lights out. I thought he was coming along pretty good. He seemed very offensive, had a lot of fight in him. So I really thought Spratley was going to win that. Not that Drake has been bad. I just thought he doesn't score a lot of points. So, but I know he sits on his knee a lot. That slows a lot of stuff down. So maybe that was it. But that match kind of stuck with me. And then I think Jordan Williams too beating Victor Vornovich pretty good. So yeah, it was definitely a good duel. But I didn't think Iowa will win 7. But hey, you never know how I go.
We had it. I think on paper it was 6-4. But then they snuck that one, and then Oklahoma State snuck one back at 49 because Rachi would be ranked over Jordan, and then. So that was one flip and then the 2 flips at 65 and heavy. Mark, you said this to me off the air, and Ayala's a Fort Dodge guy, and you coached in Fort Dodge for years. And, we mentioned Bobby and Tanner and those guys last week with their high school state performance. But Ayala's a guy that has scored a ton of points over the years, like most of these kids that are really good. But maybe a better way to say it is he was a high volume attacker. Okay, like Messenbrink is an extremely high volume attacker for a college wrestler. You see it a lot in high school because guys aren't scared. Like, I know how to get out of this shot. Like maybe Zahid Valencia is a perfect example. Like he worked so hard on getting out of bad shot situations that he would shoot all the time. But you said this to me, and you always got some really good pearls of wisdom. Ayala's really slowed his attack rate down, and that's probably what makes him great. Not that he can't win these other ways, but his path to victory is a lot of pressure and a lot of shots and getting you off balance, and he's not really doing that as much now, right?
No, it seems like he's really slowed down his offense. I don't know if it's strategic. I don't know if him and Terry and Tom Brands have talked about we're just gonna score 1. It doesn't seem like that's what they would talk about because they are a high motor. We're going to go out and we're going to bury you and we're going to stay on you. But some of the matches he lost, he had leads in going up to those, getting into the third period, and then kept attacking and lost a few of those matches. So I think he's starting to sit back and say, hey, I can score when I need to. I'm not going to put myself in a bad position. I don't like watching him wrestle like that near as much as I did before because he has such a great gas tank and it's got so much offense. But I think he rushes some things. And Cornell, I'm going to ask you a question because wrestling has changed since I coached. I mean, it has changed immensely since I've coached. How do you attack a guy on one knee? Because it seems like it's hard to get a position when you're not used to wrestling it, and he's good at it. And AJ Ferrari was really good at it his freshman year. He'd be down on that one knee or both knees, and guys didn't know what to do, and he was able to generate some type of offense off that. Where did this come from, and what do you need to do to change that?
Well, I think a lot of guys been doing it. I mean, Zeke Morsey kind of used to do it when he was at West Virginia. I had kids do it when they didn't have a lot of defense on their feet, so I had them go to a knee, especially if they're going against a guy who leg attacks a lot. So it's a good way to keep your legs free and keep your head in the way. But when you do that, you can't give up go behinds, which Drake is doing a good job of not giving up go behinds and getting stuck in front headlock. So it is. And even McGee from Arizona State, he did a lot on his knee and he had a lot of attacks there too. He had a whole system that he uses. And like you said, AJ Ferrari was so dangerous there because he can go to both knees and double leg you. So I don't know. It's not a lot to do, but that's why in freestyle they make you come up because it's so defensive in freestyle.
It's immediate passivity in freestyle, right?
Yeah, because you can slow the action down so much if you drop to a knee. So, I don't know. I think they, maybe folk style might eventually change that rule. So.
It's a great point. Like you said, to use it defensively, right? Like if you're wrestling a high volume guy and the guy can't, you can't stop him from getting to your legs and he's a really clean finisher. And especially if you drop the one knee, like it's almost like if you drop your left knee, people, they visually, like I got to get to the right side. And even if that's not their best side, like now it really screws them up. So it's going to change some things. Like, quick thoughts. The thing that kind of shocks me is like you can have an overtime match and then the score's 8-1 in overtime. It's just, and then if there was like a penalty point, you'd have a major in overtime, which was like never a possibility. I said this to a couple of people. I love Dayton Fix. He's been on the show. I'm friends with his mom. I had dinner with his dad a couple of weeks ago. If you're Dayton Fix and you're Oklahoma State, he's got to go get 2-3 takedowns in the first period. You have to expect there's going to be an adrenaline dump in your last match at Gallagher. And he got tired. And he got tired because of the adrenaline dump, not because he's not in shape. Okay, like that's just life. And he's been there a long time and he grew up around there. Like you got to go. It's not worth riding for a minute to get that one extra point. Go cut him and get another takedown. That's a 2-point gap, and do one more. Even if you give up the escape and it's 9-3 at the end of the first period, you trade escapes. It's 10-4. You just need one takedown. And then you can even give away the escape and you're still fine. And I think coaches are slow to catch up to that, because it used to be like get a takedown, ride them out, or get 4-1 plus riding time. You're better off getting a 6-2, or 6-2 is still better than 4-1. Because that point can't come off the board, or 9-2 or 9-3. So I think that's going to be some things that people that literally study the strategic side of things are going to look at a little bit more in the off season. So that's my 2 cents worth. So Iowa ends up in the dual meet rankings, the Coaches Association poll number 2, Nebraska 3, Oklahoma State 4. Cornell, I know you don't nerd out about this, but Mark and I did rankings for years for track wrestling. Probably one of the more bizarre years of ranking, especially I think 125 would keep most rankers up every week, up at night, way too long. Like it's gone so many different ways. So we're going to get into that. Oh, no, subtle flex with the watch.
Yeah, a little bit. Hey, I'll ask you this. Who do you like? I know Oklahoma State was ranked number 2. Was that just for duels, or was that including maybe tournament teams?
That's great. I can pull this up right now. We can actually do that. So we work with this fantasygrade.com website, and they take, so what you're saying right here, they do the team rankings from intermat, flow, win, and open mat, do the compilation, take the average. Okay. So, and they do it based on the average number, where the actual points might be a little different. So this week, if you're watching or not, I'll read them out. Penn State, 137 and change. Then Iowa's at 67. North Carolina State's at 62. Oklahoma State's at 61.5. Iowa State's at 60. Michigan's at 56. Nebraska's at 55. Virginia Tech's at 54. Cornell's at 54. Missouri's at 50, Lehigh's at 49. And I'm rounding those a little bit. If you're watching, there's some decimals there, but for the most part, that's correct. So, Cornell, to answer your question, you only need one person to kind of drop out a little bit to change things. So like Doucette, when he lost to Heinzelman, his consensus rank was number 8, which is worth 5.5 points. And when he drops to even number 9, that's a 3.5 point drop. And if he dropped again to Keeter and dropped to that 13 through 16 tier, he lost another 0.5 point. So there's sometimes where movement doesn't change at all. If you move from 10 to 12, you get the same number of points, because that's a round of 12, placer. 13 to 16, there's no change. 17 to 25, there's no change. Or 17 to 24, excuse me. And 25 to 33, there's no change. But like, for example, Oklahoma State lost points in that duel because Olynyk fell and Doucette fell a little more. Now, the Doucette loss probably at most was a point. I think it was probably 0.5 point. But Olynyk dropped 3 or 4 slots. And then what's cool about this website is if you go here, you go to 65. So Olynyk was 3rd last week and dropped to 7th. Wow. And so you go from 13.5 points to 6.5 points. That's a 7-point drop in the team rankings. Am I making sense there, Cornell?
Yep, make a lot of sense.
They were, like Cornell, as you asked last week before the duel, they were number 2 in the team rankings. For tournaments also, yes, and duels. They were undefeated, so they had their points scheduled. That's where they would go. But you look from 2 to 10, and I think we counted, what was it, like an 8-point difference from second to 10th place, David? So it's so close.
2 to 11 is basically 19 points. And that's like one guy, like I'll tell you where Lehigh got dump trucked is Stanich lost. And he was ranked like number 2. And here's what's goofy. Like, this is where some people's rankings, frankly, should get thrown out, because like Stanich, if you look over here to the side, is ranked 3, 3, 4, or 3, 3, 3, 4, and then 20. So I don't know how Wynn has Stanich at 20, but that pulls him down because they take the average. That pulls him down to 5th. And so, I mean, the problem with 25, the problem with all these weights or this weight is, it used to be like, okay, Cornell's undefeated, so he's the one. If I lost to Cornell, that loss doesn't hurt me because everybody lost to Cornell. And then you work down, okay, well, I'm undefeated except him. I'm number 2. Okay, well, the problem here is all these guys have wins above where they're ranked and losses below where they're ranked. So everything is topsy-turvy. Like Figueroa beats Caleb Smith and Stanich over the weekend, but he has just some horrific losses. Like, he lost to the Oregon State backup. So you can't beat the guys that were number 2. Like, if you're looking at this, Caleb Smith, let me scroll down here. Caleb Smith was 6 last week and Stanich was 2 last week. You can't beat 2 and 6 in a weekend and then lose to number 55 earlier in the year. Like, it screws it up so bad. And when I say you can't, obviously you can, but then I had 3 college coaches call me this week on Monday because their coaches poll was due. And the only weight they called me about was 25. And, and I said the same thing to them. I'm saying to you, like, about these guys, like, hey, it's body of work. And a lot of times, maybe you look at their last 8 matches, like maybe you throw out, like maybe I was 7-1 in the beginning, but now I'm 3-5. And Cornell was the other way. He started out 3-5 and now he's 7-1. So maybe he deserves it because he's wrestling better at the end of the season. But I can tell you this, the rubric does not calculate that. When you win and when you lose doesn't matter. How bad you win or lose doesn't matter. Like, we have that formula, and those are not a part of it. So you're going to see the potential for some massive seeding change, some changes in the seeds versus the rankings here, like at this weight. We need to get in the weights anyway, but the big news at 25, like we said, was Figs winning those 2 matches. Cooper Flynn also lost to Camacho. So there's a perfect example. Cooper Flynn is 4th and Camacho is 11th, and Camacho just beat him. And by the way, typical awesome pandemonium between Virginia Tech and North Carolina State. They decided to flip the coin and start the match at 49. Caleb Henson looked a little rough coming off the scale, but found a way to get it done against Jackson Arrington. And at the break, Virginia Tech was up 4-1. And then NC State ran the table the second half, including a win by Kai Arini over Latona. Cornell we know Kai pretty well. I think Vinny actually wrestled him in the state finals one year, right?
Yep.
That was about 50 pounds ago for Vinny. But tough kid. So NC State wins the ACC title, or at least the dual title, excuse me. 33, not a lot of change at the top. V&D and Farber are working their way up. So, Mark, who does Iowa wrestle at the Big Tens, Teskey or Schriever?
Boy, I have no idea.
Teskey.
I mean, you think Teskey?
I think it's already out. That's why I know Teskey. I think
they said something on the podcast that it will probably be Teskey, but I don't think Iowa's released it yet. I have no idea if Ben Keeter's going to wrestle. I have no idea.
I think
really, I have no idea who they're wrestling at about 3 different weights. So,
Mark, how can you be their consultant and not know these things?
I'm not. They don't really put me in that loop yet. I'm working on it though, David.
You're efforting.
I know a guy that knows a guy, so I'm working on it.
I know those guys.
All right.
I think, but anyway, I still think you got to go Teskey. So
So that's a very interesting thing, right? Like as a coach, because Teskey has been through it more, may respond better under the pressure. Okay. But Teskey's gone after this year. So if your thought as a coach is we're probably not going to medal at this weight either way, do you let Schriever wrestle knowing that he can get some experience and maybe be more likely to help you next year? Like if they're each going to score a point or two, that's an interesting argument, right? Cornell, like you might have that at Sem, right? Where like, I shouldn't say that because all your guys wrestled really well, but maybe there's a year where like, maybe this guy's not going to place. And I mean, that's a tough decision.
I think, if you're trying to get points at a big tournament, sometimes I say it's good to go with the younger guy, but in that case, looking at it that way, he's a senior. You never know what he could pull out when they realize it's my last one. So they may go in with a good mindset and get the job done. So,
and that can go either way too, right? Because some of these 6th and 7th year seniors, like they get on the backside of this bracket and you're like, man, these dudes are just done. Right. So, I mean, that's just like, I'm just done. I don't want to make weight that last time, all that kind of stuff. So 41, we have a very interesting thing here where Etchemendia, Jameson, and Happel have the I beat you, you beat me, the third guy, A beat B, beat C, beat A. So that's going to be super interesting. Mark, Real Woods, is he back? Is he back? Like, is he a guy we see making the finals, winning the tournament now?
Well, I know a guy that knows a guy, and I think he's back. I hope he is. He looked better this weekend than he did the previous 2 matches that he wrestled. So
yeah, it seems like he might be figuring it out. 49. Okay, so here's interesting. So I knew this was going to happen. Parco beat Lovett, and the rankings didn't change, and people are freaking out. But this is another example. Parco beat Lovett, Lovett beat Henson, Henson beat Parco, and Parco has an off-book loss to Ty Whalen from Princeton, who's not rostered. Now, I don't see this changing, and it's important because those guys are a tier. I mean, I think Lovett was on his own tier until the Parco match, and there were some controversial calls, but even if it's a 1-point match, if Cornell beats me by 1 point, I would say we're in the same tier. I think there's a big difference. So if those guys are tier 1, you want to be the guy that doesn't have to wrestle with one of the other 2 in the semis. Like, I don't think Ridge Lovett has any problems with Jackson Arrington if they're in the semis, and he's already wrestled Austin Gomez. So, and these were the seeds. Ridge would have the winner of the 4-5 in the semi. So this is interesting, and it's not surprising, but it is interesting. And if you only look at like recency bias, you might be surprised. 57, 0 changes. 65, we talked about this. All right, so 65, and I guess we can just mention this. I mean, Missouri was super sick this weekend and basically didn't wrestle. I talked to Tyrell Todd this week. He said there were about 7,000 hostile fans in Ames that were not happy that Keegan O'Toole was there. My understanding is that some of those guys were not going to wrestle both duels anyway, but they were going to drive up on Saturday with an assistant coach for the Sunday duel, and they all woke up sick. And we have no time to get into what I'm about to say, but duels don't matter. Okay, duels don't matter in terms of how coaches get judged, how they get paid, any of this stuff. So when in doubt, I mean, I'll use this because Cornell's younger than me and I was one of his coaches. If he's dinged up, he's not going to wrestle. I know Sem had this all year. I don't think they had their full lineup maybe until the national preps. Wow. So, like, I know they didn't have it at Ironman. I mean, and obviously it's his team, but they didn't have it at Hall of Fame duels. I know that. I don't think they had it at Beast. And nobody cares. Like, you got to do what you got to do, but it actually matters more in high school because they're doing the national rankings based on all these tournaments. In college, the duels mean nothing. They only mean individual seeding result changes. So I do think this is fascinating now, though. Like, if David Carr wins the Big 12s and either Hamidi or Messenbrink win the Big 10s, So Mark, let me ask you this. If Hamidi wins the Big Tens, he lost a car.
Yep.
So, all right. Messenbrink wins the Big Tens.
There you go.
Carr wins the Big 12s.
Yeah.
Give me the top 5 seeds.
How it should be, I would say David Carr number 1, but how it may be, Messenbrink 1 because he's undefeated. And the only reason I'm saying that, David, is if you now look at 1 point 2 weeks ago, it was Big 12, Big 12, Big 12, the top 3 guys at 165. Yeah. Now it's Big 12, Big 12, Big 10, Big 10, and then Big 10 again.
Well, no,
no, I understand Ramirez is there, but I'm not counting that conference right now. But so now you got 3 Big Tens over the top 3 of the Big 12. So I think he could get the number 1 seed, whether it's right or wrong. I have no idea. But before we go any further, David, this thing about the duels don't count.
They count. They just don't matter.
I know they don't. You say they don't matter. They do for the sport. Because if we start doing what we're doing in the last 5 years and not putting our best guys out on the map for the fans aren't going to be going. And that's a problem.
No, I understand that. And I agree with that. Okay, like no one's crazy enough to say that. But the point is, like I talked to a coach and he goes, there's no financial bonus in our conference. He goes, if you win the dual meet title, it means nothing. There's not even a trophy. He goes, so why would we risk it? Like what they have to do is come up. Basically, wrestling is like basketball. Like if you're pretty good, you make the tournament. And then everybody gets excited for those 3 weeks in March or our weekend in March for NCAAs. If you're like football, every game matters. Like even when they expand this thing to 12 teams, I mean, it's going to make the regular season matter less, but like every game matters or every match matters. The other thing is this, and college coaches don't want to say this out loud, but it's way easier to put together a good dual meet team in college than it is a good high school or a good tournament team. Because it's way easier for my bad guy to be a little bit better than your bad guy than for me to find 6 guys that can go deep in a tournament.
Correct.
And so
I think people are overlooking, David, the importance of the duels for the fans, and the fans are the ones that actually drive the sport. For example, when Oklahoma State last year came to Iowa and wrestled, we were both there on the floor watching the duel. We were actually pleasantly surprised that we had every starter from both teams. The last duel of the season before the conference tournaments, they had all their guns out there wrestling each other. And that was impressive.
Everybody wants everybody's team to be 100% healthy the whole year, and we see all these matchups, and then there's like people stomping up and down like we should have national duels, and people don't understand that like Penn State or Iowa every other year makes probably at least $500,000 on that duel. So why would they go wrestle it for free to keep us like there's a bunch of stuff here that people are screaming from mountains that they don't know what they're talking about. Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Cornell.
Yeah, I would say too, like what you just said, the money that produced in the sport. I mean, if I'm like I said, Iowa, Penn State, they actually can make money off their duels by their fan base and the people who show up that day. And yeah, it's a big deal. I know I've been around a couple coaches to where if their starters don't wrestle, they might mention, we want these guys to wrestle because we want our fans there. So, if the kids wants to take off, sometimes it's a hard choice. But, for the most part, I think the smart college coaches want their guys to wrestle, but at the same time, they're trying to do what's best for the kid also. So it takes a lot.
Well, I think this, like, and all three of us have done this, like long ago, semi-long ago, probably last week. We've all sat in a family's living room and said, hey, I'm going to take care of your son or daughter. Cornell, you're doing both, but in our case, I'll take care of your son, and we're going to treat him the right way. And so your number one obligation is to the kid. Like, think about all those matches Spencer Lee was wrestling, wasn't wrestling. And, he comes out and says, well, I decide when I wrestle. Well, that's bonkers if it's true. And really, what it comes down to is what is the incentive for the coach to wrestle a kid who's kind of hurt? Okay. And if the incentive is nothing, then they're not going to do it. If the incentive is a lot, then the kid's probably going to want to do it. And like, if you look at Iowa as an example, this year they host Penn State and they went to Oklahoma State. Next year it's flipped. So they always have one banger home duel a year, and they draw great anyway. But like, Oklahoma State had a massive crowd there Sunday. So they made money. I don't know who gets the concessions. I know a little bit about how that works because I run Hall of Fame duels, but like, they made money, and that's good for the program. So, and those people bought those tickets, whether or not, you know, if Dayton had been hurt, they still would have paid. 74, no changes at the top. This Sima kid from UNI is working his way up. 84, again, TJ Stewart's having a nice freshman year. Beat Fishback and still somehow ranked behind him. That's a pet peeve of Mark and I's. 97, Louis Dupre. I think he's like a seventh-year guy, so he's cracked the top 8, so that'll be interesting. This weight is full of guys that are below. This weight in 57 has guys that are not in the top 8 that could easily make it. And then heavyweight, probably my favorite guy to watch wrestle, Younger Bastida. Really wrestled well against Zach Elam. He's had an unbelievable year. They posted his like 82% bonus rate. He's undefeated. Number of takedowns he scored versus given up. And he's still got to wrestle Hendrickson in the Big 12s, and then probably wrestle Hendrickson again at the NCAAs. Although, so this is an interesting thing. So Colton Schultz lost to Bastida, so maybe this doesn't matter. But let's say Bastida wins the Big 12s and Colton Schultz wins the Pac-12s and Kirkfleet wins the Big 10s. Does Colton Schultz get the 3 seed over Hendrickson, Mark?
My opinion, no.
Okay, well, Schultz will have lost.
Because he lost to Bastida, and if Bastida beats Hendrickson, then it's kind of head-to-head, and I think Hendrickson placing over him last year at the national tournament, not that it's supposed to count, but David, it does, probably will not be seeded over. Cornell, what do you think?
Well, wait. Before we do that, conference title is a part of the formula.
Yeah, well, they say that, but
no, it is.
NCAA does what they want to do, David. We've talked this over and over. You shake your head. We've talked about this over and over again. We are dumbfounded half the time why they did what they did.
All right, so let's say this. In the written formula, conference tournament matters, okay?
Yes.
So Schultz would have that over Hendrickson.
Okay.
So, Cornell, I mean, you can feel free to chime in here. Kirkfleet would be the 1. Bastida would be the 2. Who's the 3?
I think they're going to have to give it to Schultz just because the big wins he has and not that Hendrickson doing. But, I mean, Big 12 is a tougher tournament, right, than the Pac-12 too also, right? For sure.
So, I mean, that's the problem, right? Like, so where Hendrickson will be higher than Schultz's RPI, like his strength of schedule. But to be fair, Hendrickson has not wrestled Bastida and he has not wrestled Elam, which are the 2 best guys in the Big 12 besides him. I don't think he's wrestled Doucette either. I don't even know if he's wrestled Heinzelman. Like, he may have wrestled none of these guys. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe his RPI is not going to be that good. I'm just telling you, Mark, I think there's a chance Schultz gets the 3 seed.
And that's possible. I'm just saying, I think Hendrickson will, but I've been wrong many, many times. Now, David, you did say something the other day, and I'm going to say this out loud. You think Bastida has a shot at winning the D1 Nationals? You mentioned that.
I absolutely think that.
Cornell, have you watched Bastida wrestle this year, and do you think he could win it?
I haven't watched him wrestle as much. I haven't seen a match yet, so I've been missing the Iowa State action. So, but
hey,
I kind of pay attention.
If I coach Cornell, he's going to side with me.
But I don't fight Mirikitani picks too much.
Okay, so I will tell you, I talked to Kyvan Gadsden this week, and he said at one point, Bastida, Kirkfleet, and him were all working out together, and it was pretty even. Now, practice is practice, and it was several years ago, blah, blah, blah. So, I mean, look, here's the thing. Bastida's not as big as Kirkfleet, but I think he's as strong, and it's not as big of a difference as you think. I think Bastida's like 230 and Kirkfleet's like 240, 245. And then the other part of it is Kirkfleet's better on top. I mean, Kirkfleet maybe very possibly can ride Bastida for a long time. Bastida is not going to ride Kirkfleet at all. So if I'm coaching Bastida, I'm like, you're not picking down. So when the match starts, you're losing 1-0. You got to get 1 takedown or 2 stall calls in 7 minutes. And if you lose 1-0, you lose 1-0. But I would not pick down and put Kirkfleet in a really good position, because it's not just if he gets let's just say he gets, a minute 30 of riding time and then you get out. And so that period's even. You're going to be tired if you got road for, Kirkfleet rides hard. He's not a draper. He punishes guys.
Yeah, and picking down is way overrated. I don't know where this thing picking down is a thing. It's overrated.
Well, that's probably another time for another podcast. I don't disagree with you. And then now we got the, now we could bring Willie in on that, because I know he feels the same way. So it's actually a good segue, because Willie Saylor is a part of the National Wrestling Hall of Fame duels. And so it has been one of my tasks to follow how high school teams have been doing, especially the teams in our duels. And just to give people perspective, and there's one more week left of, at least 1 or 2 weeks left of high school season, right? Cornell, like Pennsylvania and New Jersey have not finished up yet.
Yeah, Ohio, I think also.
Yeah, you're right. Because I'm still waiting for the Mass Perry results. So, but right now, the current rankings, the teams that wrestled in Hall of Fame duels: Sem was 1, Poway's 3, Edmond North 4, Buchanan 8, Del Barton 9, Lake Highland Prep 12, Mass Perry 15, Clovis 17, Bixby 20, St. Peter's 26, Joliet 29, Pomona 33, Stillwater 39. We have contracts from Sunnyside, who is 34, and Bishop McCourt, who's 14, and we're still talking to 2 of the top 10 teams. So this is it's kind of unprecedented, Cornell. I'll say this. Edmond North, well, we'll start from the bottom. Del Barton won the dual meet states, beat St. Joe's Regional. I know you and Coach Stoll have a good relationship. I got to call your duel with them. Brian Stoll's one of the good guys in the sport. Does a great job. That's significant, winning the New Jersey state title. They still have their individual tournament to go, but that's a big step for them. The next thing is Buchanan. Buchanan did not win the California tournament, but actually had 12 medalists in a 1-class state. So that's super impressive. Edmond North had 14 medalists. First team to ever do that in Oklahoma. 8 firsts, 2 seconds, 4 thirds. Probably their biggest upset win was Joe Jeter beat Ishmael Guerrero. Ishmael Guerrero cut down from 57 to 50 to avoid Cody Rutledge and Landon Sumner, and then lost to Jeter in the finals 7-3. But it was 7-0. So that match really wasn't even as close as it sounded. Edmond North was 3rd. Poway was 4th. You were there, obviously. They had a 9 criteria semifinal. That was a lot of fun to sort out. They bumped Poway above them in the national rankings because Poway added a state champ at 215 that didn't wrestle in their duel. Poway wins California State and has 7 finalists. And like, I talked to Mike Malconico, whose son is there, and he's like, my son is struggling to make the JV. So that's how good that program is. So they get the unofficial title of best public school in America. And then Blair took 2nd at the national preps, and Sem takes 1st, Mark. And I don't know if I've talked to you about this, but 14 weights. They had a 9th, an 8th, a 5th, a 2nd, and 10 firsts. I don't think that's ever happened. I'm proud of all the guys I coach, but that is a significant accomplishment. Lapped the field, 125 points, probably your biggest individual match, I would guess, is Nathan, at least in the rankings, is Nathan Desmond over Leo DeLuca. That's a huge win. That's a guy going to Penn State versus a guy going to Iowa. At least they're verbal. They can't sign yet and all that stuff. So Cornell, and this is right on time. This is Black History Month, and today is February 29th. So we got you on just in time. Thank God for leap year. We talk a lot. You and I talk a lot. And so just tell me a little bit about, it feels like it's very rare that you get everybody relatively healthy, at least everybody in the lineup, and they all wrestle pretty much as well as they can in the most important meet of the year. So, just tell me what that ride was like.
Yeah, I'm gonna switch gears for a second. I just want to say thanks for the invite to National Wrestling Hall of Fame duels. It was a great tournament. I think that experience gave us, and we travel a lot together, but that was just a great team bonding experiment. Sometimes you have, so many superstars on your team, it can get, just weird, but that tournament, I think, really brought us together a lot, and we had to deal with so much adversity there. So, but anyway, I just want to not talk about me, to talk about you. That you guys put on a great tournament. You did a great job doing that, and it's one of the best tournaments in the country for sure.
I appreciate that. It's an interesting energy there, right? Because it's not like Iron Man where you're running around all over. Like, your guys are rooting for each other.
Yeah. So it was awesome. Now, what was the question again? I'm sorry. You said the ride. Just tell me
about that weekend.
Yeah, it was the weekend before we had our state tournament, and we had all 14 guys in the finals, and we had only lost 4 matches. So we had 4 guys take second. So I knew we were on the verge to do something special, right? You just never know. But the weekend before kind of told us what we had. And like you said, the main thing is to get to the tournament healthy, which is a hard thing to do, right? You may think you are, but you always need a little luck involved. And the kids really wrestled lights out. And by the time the national tournament came, we were well rested and energized to compete. So it just worked out good, man. Worked out good this time. And one thing that I know of, and everybody knows who's been in this sport for a long, next year it may not be that way. So you better enjoy it while you can.
Yeah, well, one of the things you and I talked about was you guys won it. You've won it 2 of the 3 years you've been there, the national title. You were 4th the in-between year at the preps, and they had you ranked 7th nationally, which is obviously subjective. And when we invited you to the national duels the first year, and economically it didn't work for your program, school, whatever. And, you reached out and you're like, these guys want to go. We want to be the #1 team in America. And we feel like if we go to these duels and we can beat Blair, like at least on the dual meet side, we're like, it's kind of, the argument is in our favor. I'll just say that. And so, it was great. We had you, certainly added prestige to our event, like, I'm texting Leroy and Ed and Ethan and Clay about how all these programs are doing over the weekend. I got like my phone, my tablet, my laptop, and if I was smart enough to have one of those watches, I'd be watching 4 different things at once, besides the Missouri State tournament for all the border brawlers. But you have a ton of kids that are going on to the next level. I know you have a very special relationship with Luke. He came up there with you, and you've coached him forever, and I got a chance to work with him a little bit when he was a kid. But is there maybe a story from the tournament that hasn't gotten enough publicity that you'd like to share?
Man, that's a good question. I think for the most part, our heavyweight, I guess he has a great story. He's actually from Ukraine, refugee from there, and he just kind of started wrestling folk style. So, and he got on the podium, which was huge for him. I think that is a great story. And he actually be going to wrestle for Coach Sherritt's at Maryville University,
who got recruited because his son came and sang the national anthem because you heard him at Hall of Fame duels. So it all works out.
It all worked out, but just a great story for him to from dealing with a war to learning folk style wrestling and being a part of the best program in the country. What an amazing story and opportunity. So he, unlike the other kids, he doesn't take some stuff for granted. So which is interesting. So
Cornell,
Yeah.
can I ask you a question? Because I don't get to talk to an elite high school coach anymore. I got to talk to David. But
There's
anyway,
never a lead high school coach.
hey, Cornell. And we've talked about this on previous podcasts. I'm just amazed what these clubs have been able to do for the kids, the way they've elevated them. What have you seen over the last 10, 15 years that these clubs have really advanced these kids to a different level? What are your opinions of the clubs and things that are going on right now with high school kids and actually middle school kids also?
Yeah. One, I think, everybody realizes age has nothing to do with winning, right? You can win no matter what age you are. I think that came out. And two, I think if you want to know from a technical aspect, I think the kids nowadays can attack both sides of the body better. And they don't care about switching their feet as much. Where I think, maybe in our day we wrestled, you had, if you're right leg lead, you stay right leg lead the whole time. I think that has changed. And the defense has really picked up, and the reattack, the defense to the reattack is way quicker. And YouTube, so all these kids, so much YouTube, so much knowledge out there. But if I say the most thing technically is the reattacks are so much quicker now, and people realize you have to be athletic to reattack.
Yeah, reattacks are really interesting because you have some people, as good as they are, they can't generate a lot of their own offense, but they'll just they'll push to get you to shoot so then they can create their angle. And that's a really important thing when you're sort of recruiting and studying kids, because kids, like, I'm super biased, but like take a kid like Luke, he can get to his offense and then he can also reattack. And like, I was on the mic with that match with Matty Lopes where Lopes just, tied up. Lopes wrestled really smart, like really smart. Kept himself in the match. For people that don't know, that's the Blair duel. It was 1-1. Luke got the takedown in overtime. But whenever you shut down a guy that's at worst number 11 in our country at 57 kilograms, and you're a high school kid and you can take him to overtime, you've done something special, and not a Jax Forrest Luke 8-8, 9-9 overtime. Like, we just shut it down. And you and I talked about it. I won't share, but the adjustments you learn from that match and the things you tweak, to make it happen. Yeah. So it's super interesting when you're kind of watching that, because the coach in me will never go away. Even as the tournament event guy and podcast guy, like, I grew up with a dad as a coach, and coached and got to coach with you, and Mark and I coached against each other, and Mark coached against me. So let me give you the floor, Cornell, for the final thing. You've had a lot of people that have kind of poured themselves into you over the years. I know you have relationships, all the way going back to your high school and college coaches, and then like, the KJs and those people of the world. Do you want to take a minute, maybe chronologically, just give some of those people a shout so that, because I don't know how many more platforms you'll have like this.
Yeah, no, awesome. Yeah, definitely, my high school coach, Charlie Scherz Sr., Charlie Scherz Jr., your dad, Coach Ryan Mirikitani, the legend, taking a chance on me, teaching me a lot of knowledge. And it's funny, to this day, one of my main positions that I work from our Merrimack days is crab riding. Like, we always worked that a lot in the room, especially during folk style season. Of course, Coach KJ, Bobby Douglas, I really took off when I really got introduced to Bobby Douglas and was able to have access to him. Coach Haggerty, even Coach Mayhab let me tag around them for a while, and Coach Powell and Coach Mellon. Like, those guys have all played some type of influence to help me become a real good coach and to keep getting better. And of course, now since I'm in Pennsylvania, I get to hang around Cale Sanderson and Casey Cunningham and Cody Sanderson and crew for a while. So definitely, the game is always changing, and you just keep learning so much. And, the biggest thing that I learned from all these guys is, one, how to peak. Bobby Douglas really gave me a good blueprint on how to peak. And then, one thing that I really take, I shouldn't say, I guess I don't know if I can say it or not, but really watching Penn State and how they approach finals matches, I think I've been trying to steal that.
But we should always try to steal from anybody that's doing something the right way and winning. I'm sure you got people trying to steal from you right now. It's like when we run these events, like you see what works for other people and you add it. And like one of the phrases that I stole from you is like people will say, well, you did you did a great job coaching this kid. And they already had like somebody like you helping them. And I'm like, it's always a good meal. I just tried to put a little salt and pepper on it, but they put their own sauce on it, and so that and Mark Cornell always has the best music playlist when you go to practice. Like it's always updated, it's always on point, always has the Bluetooth set up. So like it's always
it's funny. I'll give you another quick story. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're good.
So during the finals matches, I always played my music during the match, and the people in the arena, I guess, were kind of upset that I was playing music. And usually I just play Michael Jackson. And so they sent a little girl to try to make me take my speaker, and I kind of ignored her a little bit. And then the president came and was like, hey, you mind if I take your speaker? I'm like, yeah, I do mind. And he was like, it messes up the system in the arena. It's like, and I kind of believed it a little bit, and I thought about it. I'm like, it's 2024. You telling me this little Bluetooth speaker is messing up the radio in the arena? So then I played it again. But they're probably going to write a new rule that I can't play music. So
yeah. So, and Mark, maybe you can help talk to whoever runs the Missouri Wrestling Hall of Fame chapter and see if they get me and Cornell in there. Somehow neither one of us are in yet. We haven't figured it out.
That's a surprise.
I'm serious. We're surprised too. Being honest with you, we're looking at credentials. We're a little bit surprised. So,
yeah, that's awesome feed. But no, it's just been a great year though. But the kids were pretty special, and we'll see if we can run it back. I was just actually before I got to talk to you guys on the phone with our boosters and our coaches, and just trying to think the game plan for next year already.
How many kids of the 14 are back next year, Cornell?
We have 6 champs back next year, and a returning All-American who didn't make the starting team this year, but All-American the year before. So 6 champs and a returning All-American.
Okay.
All right, just so people don't think we fell asleep, and then I'm going to circle back to Cornell. We understand that Carter Starachi got hurt. From the people we've talked to, it seems like he's probably going to be able to wrestle at the Big Tens and the NCAAs. Maybe not wrestle at the Big Tens, but get himself to the NCAAs. And we also know that Penn State is not going to put out a full disclosure press release either way. So talking about it and guessing about it when we've seen guys wrestle, and then we've seen guys like Soriano and they entered him in the bracket, and just to screw up Oklahoma State seeds that year to put Piccinini on the same side as Gilman. Like, you're not going to get anything out of those guys. Even if they told somebody like Cornell, he's not going to tell anybody. You're in the vault. That's not going to happen. I think it's fair to say if you're not rooting for Carter Starachi to be healthy and wrestle, you're probably not a very good human being. Doesn't matter what school you root for. I mean, like Mark, you're an Iowa fan, but you're rooting for Carter Starachi. Like, it's a chance to see history, chance to be a 4-time national champion, which is super rare. And it's probably the only thing left Penn State doesn't have on their resume, like maybe not 10 in a row or whatever, 9 in a row, 10 in a row. But besides that, I mean, in terms of the big things. And Cornell, I think this is true. I had no way of looking it up, but I think you're the first junior college athlete to coach a number 1 team in the country. So, Mark's a junior college guy. We're all junior college guys. So, no, I mean, like, I have a lot of JUCO guys that hit me up, and they're like, man, you're kind of representing all of us out here. And the JUCO grind is different, man. The JUCO Nationals are this weekend, Mark. You mentioned that in Iowa again, right?
Yep. Council Bluffs, I think.
Yeah, NAIs are in Wichita this weekend. There's a couple more state tournaments this weekend. I know the Jersey State tournament is this weekend. So it's championship time of the year. The women are wrestling today in the Pan Ams. The men freestyle is tomorrow. Again, we're only wrestling in the weights we have not qualified. Okay. So we will. The one thing I learned over 300 episodes ago is you never worry about content. There will always be something to talk about. So, Cornell, I'm proud of you. You got to get me on the money round now.
You got to come on. I haven't did one in a while, so you probably be our first guest.
Yeah, come on before the Olympic trials, and we can chop that up since I'll be up there with you.
Oh, yeah.
Because you'll be on the floor with Luke. So that'd be great, right?
Yep.
So that's great. All right. For Mark and Cornell, I'm David. Thank you guys for watching and listening. We'll see you all next week.
Thanks for having me on.